Hi, Motheo. I'm Prudence. My phone was stolen 3 days before my trip abroad. I didn't have time to block my cards, cancel my digital wallet, or blacklist my device. I also forgot to call my bank. I only realized how much was at risk after I landed. My entire digital life is on that phone, from banking and passwords to social media. I feel like I left my identity behind in South Africa. What could I have done differently? And is there anything that I can still do now?
Welcome to Everything Counts, the podcast where we talk about the things that matter most, your money, your habits, and the digital decisions that keep you secure. Today's episode is one many of us can relate to. What happens when your phone and your digital identity get stolen? With more and more of our lives stored on our devices, a stolen phone isn't just inconvenient, it can be catastrophic. So what can you do to stay one step ahead of the fraudsters? Joining me to help Prudence answer some of these questions is Kevin Hogan, Head of Fraud Risk at Investec, and Anna Collard, Cybersecurity Expert and Digital Mindfulness Evangelist at KnowBe4 Africa. Welcome to you, Kevin and Anna. Now let's talk about Prudence. She talks about losing her phone just before she traveled. She took the risk of not picking up the phone and closing off her accounts, which is quite dangerous. Kevin, when we look at service providers like banks, when you lose your phone, because all your information is on this device, you should do this immediately. Pick up the phone and make sure you block off all the accounts.
The key to the bank is the cell phone. So it's like the keys to your car. You cannot get into your bank account without your cell phone. So if people's phones are stolen or lost, the reason that is happening essentially is the fraudsters want to get into your bank account. People are under the impression that the security on the phone is bulletproof. So I've got a password on my phone, they cannot get in. I've got facial recognition on my phone, they cannot get in. And even if, for example, we've seen clients who've been waiting for Ubers holding their phones, the phones are open, right? Even in those circumstances when the phones are taken, clients are under the assumption, well, sure, the phone's open, but they need the passwords to get into the various apps, okay, or they need facial recognition. This is simply not true. So the reality is this. Most people have very weak passwords on their phones. For most people, it's 4, 6, or 8 numbers. Okay. And the phones default to those passwords, but a lot of people don't understand you can actually have longer passwords. So the password on my cell phone is 23 characters long.
What?
You click alphanumeric and you can have as long as you like. Now, the reality is this. Technology does exist that will crack 4, 6, 8-digit passwords on cell phones in under 10 minutes. So, and that, unfortunately, that technology, in some instances, is in the hands of the fraudsters. So the assumption that you're making that your phone cannot be accessed because it's locked is unfortunately not founded. And one of the best things that you can possibly do to protect your phone is to have a very long password on it. And people say, well, Kevin, how am I ever going to get into my phone? Well, it's quite simple. You're going to use facial recognition. Okay, so facial recognition does work. 99.999% of the intrusions into stolen cell phones that we have seen has been the username and password because the fraudsters can't bypass facial recognition.
And let's look at then the behavior perspective of things. If I don't act fast, what are some of the risks I'm looking at?
Yeah, and exactly what Kevin has alluded to already is it can be a complete crisis because if we think about what we store on our phones, they are the keys to our bank account, to our digital wallets, to our email, social media accounts, passwords. Like our whole lives are on these devices. So what I would say from a behavior point of view, yes, definitely have a longer password because that is the key literally to everything else. But also make sure that if in the unfortunate incident, if you lost your phone or it was stolen or snatched, you have to act calmly, but you have to act quickly. And the first phone call you make is to your bank to make sure that that phone gets delinked from your bank accounts. Because even in the unlikely instance when they have somebody like Kevin and it's a 20-digit long passcode, if they manage to crack that or they manage to get in it somehow, they trick users through social engineering to divulge that password, that device is then no longer usable against your bank accounts. And something else that we also need to remember is, when it happens, you're obviously in quite an elevated state because, panicking, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fraudsters, what they sometimes do is they know that, and then they will contact you via email and they'll say, oh, we're from Apple, from Google. We notice some suspicious activity, just verify your account details. And that way you think, okay, they're looking out for me. Yeah. Meanwhile, it's the fraudsters stealing even more access. And think about it. If I can get into your iTunes account, I could potentially, again, I can add an Apple Watch to it and then go shopping in your name, right? Or I can, if I'm in your WhatsApp, I can do all these WhatsApp scams and contact all your friends and families to say, I need money. So, it really is, yes, the number one priority is your money, your bank accounts, but also think about all the other accounts that they can get access through your phone, like your email, your WhatsApps, your social media accounts, and they use that to then scam your contacts even further. So yes, contacting your bank, changing all your passwords immediately, and then also contacting your cell phone provider to make sure that that SIM is blacklisted, or that phone is blacklisted.
Kevin, these days it's not just about the value of the phone, it's but what's on it. So what do these fraudsters and scammers look for now that they have your phone and have accessed it?
So once they get into the phone, they're going to get into the bank accounts. So the first target is the bank accounts. And once they've got the phone, a lot of people don't know that the physical handset is registered on the bank system. So we have a little certificate on the banking app. All the banks do this. That certificate talks to the bank, and only that phone can receive the one-time PINs and the in-app messages and all these things. So that's why they need that physical handset. And obviously, when the fraudsters are in that phone and they're now using it, it appears to the bank as if it's you. So we will allow all those transactions to process. We will allow all those purchases to go through, because as far as we're concerned, it's what we call the registered device. So on our side, it looks as though it is in fact you. So it's really important that if you know that that's happened, you just phone your bank, you delink everything, but then also log into, for example, on an iPhone, log into your iCloud account and remove the phone from your Apple ID profile. Same with Android, remove the phone from the ecosystem. So that it's not associated with your Apple ID. So it can't do anything. Because remember, a lot of the authentication messages get sent to your linked iPhone device.
Let's talk about things that we love to do, but leave us vulnerable. Things like online shopping. Some of us use our phones to do that as well. What are some of the top security tips for our listeners when using accounts online?
So I am actually a customer of Investec Bank as well. And I love the virtual card feature, which is so easy to set up, by the way. It literally takes a second. You go into your card feature set, and then you literally add another card that you can then name. In my case, for example, online shopping, or your Apple card, or your, going coffee, run-of-the-mill card. So you can have up to 5 cards, I believe. And those virtual cards, basically, if they were stolen, or you went to an online shop that's dodgy, and your card details get stolen somehow, you can immediately block it, and it doesn't, you don't even have to call the bank. You can literally do it from your app. That's how easy it is. And you can also, which I learned from Kevin, you can pause those cards. So what that means is that when you're not actively using them, nobody can actually use them or abuse them, for that matter. So in the app you can say, well, if it's an online shopping virtual card, I only use it when I do my online shopping. This thing doesn't need to be active when I do anything else.
It's only when you make the transaction.
Yes, exactly.
And pause it after.
And then you could have another one that you use for smaller, maybe your subscriptions, that's obviously running, but something that you use on an ad hoc basis that doesn't need to be active all the time, right? So I think that's a really cool feature that Investec has come up with. And that is one of the number one things I would suggest people should use, because it really protects your credit card details. And then there are some general, best practices, like obviously, for example, when there's Black Friday or any sort of event, the scammers will be the first that will send you phishing emails or WhatsApp scams. So rather don't click on any of those, especially if it sounds...
I'm expecting all these discounts.
Yes? Yeah.
Love me. They want me to spend a little...
But if Takealot, for example, loves you, then rather go to your Takealot app, or you manually type in Takealot and then you look there for the offers. Don't click on any links that come, especially if they come sort of unsolicited on WhatsApp or an email, because often that's the scammers, and they can use AI to make it look completely like the real deal, right?
A lot of us now are getting into the habit of having, our cards on our phones, and even when we don't understand the security around that, right? You act as if the card is in your wallet almost, and you don't really learn about how you could protect yourself. Tell us about the virtual card and some of the things that you can do to secure your money.
Sure. So I think let's be very practical about it. I think most people, especially if you're probably, I don't know, and over 30, probably you're so used to the plastic. Okay. And remember, the plastic lasts for 3 to 5 years. Okay. And everyone is using the same card number on multiple sites. Okay, so you're doing Takealot and you're doing Amazon and you're doing all these different things. And this is where the problem comes in. At some point, you've used that card somewhere so much that you're going to use it somewhere that's not secure. It's going to get compromised. And then it's linked to all these other different sites, which is not great. So the plastic card, in my view, is redundant. You only need it for car hire. Don't use your card at toll gates. Please just pay cash. And for ATMs, that's the only thing you actually need a plastic card for. The rest you can do is virtual. So let's just reiterate what Anna's already said. So we allow you to create 5 virtual cards. You can diversify your risk by allocating each card to something different. So for example, me, I've got one for online shopping, one for online bookings, one for my son is a gamer. He loves PlayStation. So the PlayStation store was hacked like 3 times in its history already. So there's that. My Apple Pay card is literally a virtual card, and my debit order is a virtual card, and you can manage that in a slightly different way. I'll expound on that. And to Anna's point, when the cards are not being used, so for example, Takealot has saved my card information. Okay. So in the very unlikely event, just as an example, if they ever got hacked, my card would be exposed. So for example, a true story, Booking.com was hacked about 4 years ago. We had roughly 300 clients who'd used their physical plastic cards on Booking.com. They all had fraud. Okay. Now, the alternative is, like I've done, I create an online booking card. I use the online booking card on Booking.com. But now when I'm physically not actively using or purchasing something on Booking.com, hotel, airline, whatever it is, the card is paused.
Let's look at then the online websites that could trick you. How are there ways to see whether a website is real and to just pick it off and see that it's one created by fraudsters?
So there is an organization, South African Fraud Prevention Services. They're a non-profit. All the banks subscribe to them, and they do some wonderful work. Part of the work that they do is they have a portal called yima.org.za, I believe. If you just Google Yima, you'll find it. On the landing page, you can copy and paste the URL into the screen that they provide, and it'll give you a confidence score as to the site that you're on. Is it legitimate? How long has the site been registered? How long has it been running? So there's they kind of give you a confidence element to say the site potentially is legitimate or not. So that's a really easy way to check whether you think this site is dodgy or not. The other thing I just wanted to mention, which I failed to mention earlier, is very often when you use online payment merchants, they give you options on how to pay.
Yeah.
So they'll say, use your card, use instant EFT. Always use your card. Okay, let me tell you why. If you do an EFT in your own right, or you do an instant EFT in your own right, if there is non-delivery of those goods, you have no recourse at all. Gone. Okay. But in the card world, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, whoever they are, if you use your card and there is non-delivery of goods, they have what they call a chargeback. That merchant, there's a chargeback process against that merchant. You'll get all your money back because there's been non-delivery. So there's a level of insurance that automatically comes with using your card. And so there is an incentive to use your card. Okay. A lot of these vendors are saying, no, just EFTS or use instant EFT. The benefit is for them because they don't get charged the merchant fee, but you lose because there is none of this protection around if there's non-delivery of goods. So we strongly encourage clients, use your cards when you're shopping online. Don't use normal EFT or instant EFT, all those things. Besides the fact that in instant EFT, they require you to give away your online banking username and password, which we don't recommend at all.
We're going to take a quick break and then jump back straight into the conversation after this.
Why not organize your life today? It's really easy to upload and access copies of your digital documents from just about anywhere and on any device. You can upload a document in seconds and protect it for a lifetime. And you get peace of mind that it's protected with top bank-grade security. As a leading private bank, we give you unlimited complimentary storage for all your digital documents. Simply log into Investec online or the app to get started with Investec Private Vault.
Welcome back to Everything Counts. On this episode, we're discussing what to do when you lose your phone and all the data that's on it. Let's talk then about the everyday habits that might seem harmless, but could actually open the door to fraud and the risk of using a public Wi-Fi on your phone. I know, Anna, you mentioned this earlier, but what are the things that we do that could compromise us as cell phone users?
Well, security, unfortunately, there's not one silver bullet. Like you have to do that inconvenience of doing multiple things the right way, and just preventing that risk from, for example, you might have someone like a malicious person sitting in the airport or the coffee shop pretending to be from that specific location, and it says free Wi-Fi, and you thinking you're getting free Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, you're actually logging onto his device, and he or she can literally, copy or sniff whatever you're doing. Technically, like there are actually all the websites nowadays have encryption, and there's some VPN in place already, so it's not that bad. And I think from a risk level, I'd be much more concerned about not divulging my details over the phone or clicking on a phishing email than the public Wi-Fi story. But it makes sense to be careful nonetheless, to not do any financial transactions in the public domain anyway. I think unless it's really urgent, don't do a payment in the public space.
Kevin, we often get those pop-ups on our phone where the service provider says, update your app, and we swipe it away because I don't want to wait for that. How dangerous is that, having apps that are not updated? Because, it could affect your security as well.
I think a lot of people ignore it from a convenience perspective, and they don't realize that fraudsters can scan your device for vulnerabilities to let them in. Right? A brute force attack. And you make things much easier if the software on your phone is not up to date, if the software on your laptop is not up to date. And a lot of these updates are not charged for, right? They're part of the ecosystem. So please, if you get these pop-ups that say, update your computer, then do that. In fact, rather go in and just put auto update on so that your computer just does it by itself. It actually doesn't need you to intervene.
Yeah.
Exactly the same with your phone. I have an iPhone and I swipe down and I check to see which apps need updating. I literally do it every single day to make sure all the apps and everything are up to date and running correctly. That is just a very small component of a bigger ecosystem. I think what's important to realize, it's not one thing that you're doing. So like Anna's saying, it's not if I just avoid public Wi-Fi, I'm going to be good. No. If I just make sure I've got long passwords, I'm going to be good. No. I always say to people, it's like a cake. If I say to you, I'm going to give you a beautiful chocolate cake and I'll rock up here with eggs, that's literally one component of the cake. It is not the full picture. In order for you to get the full benefit out of security, it's these little things that you need to do. And it needs to become a habit.
Let's talk about using our phones to pay. We all are getting into the habit of tapping with our phones. There's something called near-field communication. Can you explain what that is, and is it secure?
Sure. So NFC is a piece of technology that when you get close to the device, information will pass from your phone into the NFC device. The most common thing that most people are used to is what we call a point of sale, what you call the card machine, essentially. It's called a POS in our world. And you obviously come close with your card. Your card's got a little chip in it, and most people will tap their card against the POS device and the transaction goes through. That is NFC. Now, your phone does exactly the same thing. Now, for those listeners who don't know, you have a wallet on your phone. If you have an iPhone, there's a wallet. If you have a Samsung, there is a wallet as well. If you don't, you can get a Google wallet that's independent, and you can load your card onto that wallet. And you can use Apple Pay to do that. You can use Samsung Pay. You can use Google Pay to load your card on the wallet. Once the card is loaded onto the wallet, you can essentially just tap your phone in the same way that you tap your card. The difference is that your phone will prompt you to say, is this you tapping? So for example, on an iPhone, you'll double click the button on the right. It'll do a facial recognition check to say, yes, this is you. And then the NFC will activate and then you can tap. Because a lot of people are concerned, I've got my phone in my pocket, they're just going to walk with a POS device and take my money. No, you need to initiate the NFC sequence to talk to the POS. And what's also interesting is it's actually much safer to tap with your phone. Okay, because what's happening is that the card information, all of that stuff is not being passed onto the terminal. Right? In the old days, when you swiped your card with the mag stripe, that mag stripe contained all your card information. So at various stages in evolution, they would clone the cards. They're essentially cloning the black mag stripe on the back of the card.
With the grabbers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, using your phone avoids that because no longer is the card information passing to the terminal. Technology called tokenization is being used. So encrypted tokens are talking to one another. So the merchant can't see your card information. Much safer to tap with your phone than with your physical plastic.
And the importance of things like biometrics and remote wiping features when it comes to security on your phone.
So I think as Kevin just explained, that I also prefer using my phone to pay, just because you have that built-in additional biometric, approval, so to speak. Like your card, you just sort of tap and that's it. So it's actually safer to use it. The biometric features on the phones are also pretty safe to use. I mean, the technology that went into that, particularly, I mean, I'm also an Apple user, is really, really good. So I think setting up biometric is definitely a good idea. And then, like with anything, like it's not the only thing that will keep you safe. So,
so combination.
Exactly. It's the combination again. And then with you mentioned remote wipe, I think it's, so there are two reasons for that. The one is, in my case, I'm a very scatterbrained person. So I lose my phone all the time. So with the Find My Phone feature, which is also, it comes with a remote wipe feature, you definitely need to enable that because it helps you to find your phone if you, let's say you just lost it in your own house, for example, or you left it in school or something. Or if you traveling and you left it in the plane or somewhere where the chances that somebody's malicious that will find this are pretty low, but you still don't want that person to get into it. So then you can use the remote wipe feature to wipe it. What Kevin actually, what I learned from Kevin is that if a syndicate specifically targets you and the fraudster steals your phone with the objective to now get into your data and your banking apps, the remote wipe feature is not going to help you because they've actually put it in in an envelope.
Faraday bag.
There we go, yes. And then you can't even get to it. So
a Faraday bag would be something that blocks signal.
It cuts the signal off from the world, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, layered. It definitely is a good idea to enable it. It will help you in those instances where it's like an either opportunistic or you just like a scatterbrain like me, you lose the phone. Definitely a good idea. If somebody really snatches your phone or targets you, then going back to what we said earlier, phone the bank immediately. Make sure you, sort of delink that phone from all your accounts, change your passwords, because even the remote feature might not help you in that instance.
Let's talk about something that I'm really horrible at now, your personal email, right? I've had my email for close to 20 years, and you can imagine the amount of passwords I've had to create over the years. You do get into a pattern. You do get lazy when creating your password because you just want to remember it, access your email. But the fraudsters also want to do that as well. So just protecting your personal email and the information going through that, how important is it to always make sure that security-wise, you're also doing your bit?
Sure. So, protecting your email actually comes down to password management. Now, part of human nature is I can't remember 10 15 character passwords and what they belong to. Most people can't even remember 10 cell phone numbers and what they belong to. So most people have defaulted to using the same password for everything. And for most people, it's an email address and a password. And for many of us, it's our Gmail address and our password because it's the easiest one to open. So the way to protect your email is actually not the actual email infrastructure itself, it's password management. It's as simple as that. The other thing that's quite interesting is most ISPs in South Africa don't offer two-step verification for email, which is this second layer that you have to go through to access your stuff, like the bank does. You put in your username and password, and then the bank sends you an additional OTP to access your bank account. Most ISPs in South Africa don't do that. A lot of the international ones like Gmail, you switch it on. And so it's actually not the email account that's the problem. It's how I'm accessing it and the habits that I use. So what's important is you've got to have unique accounts for everything, unique passwords for everything, right? Those passwords have got to be 15 to 20 characters long. But that's not convenient.
No.
So how do we solve that issue? Password manager. That's just a simple answer.
So this is a service that you can get on your phone.
Yeah. So typically you can go into the App Store, you literally type in the word password manager, and you can just pick one of the top 5. I always say to people, I'm not going to tell you use this one. Just pick one of the top 5. And a paid full version. The free version is never going to help you. And pay for a password manager and manage your password life on your laptops and on your cell phones through the password manager. However, I've learned doing this over many years. A lot of people are already going into their stuff without putting in the password. Why? Because when they logged in for the first time, a little pop-up appeared on their screen on the right-hand side that said, do you want to save the password? And you clicked yes. And that is not a password manager. That is your browser saving your password in an unencrypted format on your laptop.
I always want to save the password.
Yeah. And it's not encrypted. And so when your phone gets stolen, when your laptop gets stolen, what is the first thing one of the fraudsters go for? They go for the saved password that has been cached on your computer in an unencrypted format.
It's the first file they look for.
Correct.
And they compromise your machine. That's what they
Yeah.
could take off. And it actually makes life much more convenient because the password manager, as Kevin said, it will come up with those very long passwords that nobody can remember. It will do that job for us. And if you have it on your laptop and your phone, it syncs as well. So it makes your life so much easier and much safer. And the only thing you need to remember then as the user is that one very strong master password to get into the password manager. And you enable multi-factor authentication on that thing as well, because that again is your crown jewels, right? So the password manager is it's actually a great example of where more security becomes more convenience. Most often it's the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Like more security means less convenience, but with password managers, it actually really makes our lives so much easier.
Look, this is not just helping Prudence, but it's also helping me as well. I feel like I'm going through an intervention for my security on the phone. Now, Anna, you work and you focus on a lot of digital mindfulness, right? What should people be doing differently when it comes to their online habits?
Yeah. So what's digital mindfulness? What that term stands for is really it's really about understanding that in the digital space and fraudsters and crime, as much as they exploit our weak passwords or our weak technology, they actually exploit our psychology much more or just as much. In the most cases, the way they catch us is not necessarily through brute forcing the password, but it is through tricking us to handing over the password. And that tricking is called social engineering or sort of human hacking. And that's where they follow really sort of master plans or kind of playbooks that teach them how to manipulate us in a psychological way. And what I mean by that is, they very often will try and get us at a moment where we either distracted, we're multitasking, we emotionally triggered, or what psychologists, they call this the halt problem, which is when you're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, and you're tired. That's when we make really bad decisions in life. We become more impulsive. We click on things we shouldn't be clicking on. And criminals will exploit that on purpose. So they will try and get us when we're distracted. They'll try and send a message that will sort of make us nervous or anxious, because then we don't actually think critically and we're more likely to click on that thing or hand over the details.
Kevin, you also feel quite embarrassed when you duped or somebody's being able to convince you to give them your password. But how important is it to still call the bank?
The second you become aware that your phone has either been stolen or lost, you borrow a phone from someone and you call your bank immediately and have all your bank accounts blocked. That is the best thing that you can possibly. Once you've done that, then you can contact your MNO and have your phone blacklisted and the SIM blacklisted. That is the safest thing you can do. And then once you've gone through that whole cycle, if you have a cloud account linked to the phone profile, like with an iCloud account on the iPhone, whatever the case may be, then just delink the phone from the iCloud profile as well.
And for somebody who's not familiar, what is an MNO?
Mobile Network Operator.
So whoever provides the service to your phone,
Correct.
Let them know that this
Correct.
has happened.
100%.
And activating those fraud blocks, is it just a matter of calling just the bank?
Yes. So in Investec's case, we have an internal system. We literally push one button and we block all your accounts. It's done and dusted, so that if the fraudsters do get access, nothing will work.
And if you're lucky enough to have another device, then you can also use that as a form of, changing passwords and acting quickly.
So my recommendation is first call the bank and block everything.
That's the first thing.
Then go through the process of updating passwords and changing things like that. Don't assume that by changing the passwords, things will happen. Let me give an example. In a email hack or a BEC compromise, Okay. People assume that if their email account has been hacked and they change the password, that the fraudsters can't do anything. And that's not true, because the fraudsters create filter rules in your email account. And those filter rules intercept various types of emails using keyword triggers like invoice, if it's from your bank, whatever. So you can change that password as much as you like. As long as those filter rules exist, any email that meets that criteria will be forwarded to the fraudsters. So don't assume that changing a password will lock a fraudster out. Okay, much safer just to block the ecosystem in its entirety and then deal with the admin at a later stage.
Well, I definitely have to unlearn some of this behavior. If you take anything away from this episode, let it be this. Your phone holds your life, but it's your habits that hold the power. Whether it's enabling features in your banking app or pausing before you click, these small decisions do matter. Thank you to Kevin Hogan and Anna Collard for helping us navigate the realities of cybercrime and for showing us that how to take control before fraudsters do. So keep aware, keep alert, and also keep updating your software. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Everything Counts.
The views expressed are those of the contributors at the time of publication and do not necessarily represent the views of the firm and should not be taken as advice or recommendations. Investec Private Banking, a division of Investec Bank Limited, a registered credit provider committed to the Code of Banking Practice as regulated by the Ombudsman for Banking Services.